And in their careful consideration of composition as a drama, they are revealing for you something very distinctive about Chinese painting that differentiates it from the Western tradition of painting. So I'm comparing two landscapes here. Fan Kuan's Travelers Among Mountains and Streams from the Song Dynasty to Albrecht Alterfer Danube landscape from 1525. Now, by 1525, in Europe, painting was conceptualized as a window onto a world that you perceive all at once. Yes, there are details that you have to focus in on, but you sort of can take it in as a unified whole. The Chinese concept of space, the space that is laid out by the artist in a composition, is different because you don't take everything in all at once. You have a kind of journey through the painting. And that is what they're getting at when they talk about the three unfolding phases. You have a process of discovery and wandering. So you have multiple dynamic and shifting viewpoints. So you see this kind of looming monumental mountain, this massive mountain with the waterfall cascading down, but you can't really fully see that at the same time as you can look in on who's traveling here in these tiny little details. In the Chinese painting, you are more dynamically moving between microscopic, minute discoveries and the grandeur of the macroscopic. You're seeing mountains and waters as immense forces that shape the planet on a geological scale, and you're having a sense that your own viewing is a kind of journey that partakes of that journey of discovery and change. Whereas Western painting by this point, European painting by 1525, it had been different earlier, but it had evolved into a single viewing point. By this point, one-point linear perspective had emerged to create a kind of coherent space where objects are very stable and we have a sense of objectivity, instead of the kind of subjectivity, meaning awareness of our own process of viewing, of the flow and change of perception. So let's compare space in the Chinese painting tradition, looking here again at Emperor Huizong's copy of the Tang Dynasty painting of the ladies preparing silk. Space is mostly undefined. We certainly feel like there's a strong ground plane that's implied because we can feel how their gowns rest on the ground plane, but we don't see any line or very sharp measuring of that the way we do here in this famous painting by Raphael, one of the great Renaissance painters, painting in the 1500s, and he is using the system of one-point linear perspective, meaning he has actually measured out a grid of lines, and the lines are mathematically calculated in perfect proportions, and they have a implied meeting point, a single vanishing point, which is the far distant point. There's no single vanishing point here. There's no rigid separation of foreground and background, whereas in this painting by Raphael, we really know foreground, middle ground, background. Because this is a vision of space where the artists and their audience want a well-defined and consistent illusion of depth. This artist can make a marvelous illusion of three-dimensional bodies moving in spatial depth, but the space is an open field. So an artist like Altdorfer is using oil paint, a thick medium that uses very finely ground mineral colors to create a sense that all of these objects are as real as objects you can see out your window. Now, Fan Kuan doesn't want that. He's using the monochromatic palette of just the black ink water tones, just the black, the differentiating values of ink from light to dark, and the actual surface and color of the silk itself, because he wants a sense that he's not just showing you objects, but he's showing you processes. He's showing you the sense of undefined space here feels like the vapors of mists, as if we feel the rising of mist and the falling of waterfall. And he wants you to see the brushstrokes in his details so that he can show you how the strokes themselves move in energetic, tangled ways as if they are enacting the animate growth patterns of the trees. So this is very interesting because in the song Dynasty, Guo Xi, a painter, will publish advice on landscape painting and will say it's important to study nature not just as objects, not just rocks and trees, but as processes of change. Trees grow, they move, they unfold leaves, the leaves fall, water moves, it ripples, it crashes in waves, it spills over rocks. All of nature is movement and change. And so he's wanting to paint not just things, but the chi of mountains and streams. And so he's wanting to give us the sense of the monumentality, the forceful heft of mountains, but also the energy and flow of water as it courses over and changes those mountains. He has this marvelous part where he says, he likens the landscape to a body, saying that watercourses are the arteries of a mountain. So the mountain is alive like a body. Just as you have arteries where your blood moves, the mountain has streams, waterfalls, watercourses that are keeping it alive, that are nourishing it. The grass and trees are its hair. The mist and haze are its complexion. So these Song Dynasty painters would probably say to Altdorfer, if Van Quan was alive long enough to meet Altdorfer, hey, that's a great landscape, but those are objects. You're not showing me the shifting perception of me as on a journey through a landscape. And that idea won't catch on in the West until the 20th century, when an artist like, well, a little bit before, really I would say the 19th century with Impressionism, where certain avant-garde artists start to be interested in the flux of perception, the idea that when you look at a landscape, you're not seeing solid, stable objects, but changing light conditions. You're seeing the wind and the air. And can you paint all of that? The changing light conditions and the wind and the air. And so this Song Dynasty art theorist Su Dongpo said to discuss paintings in terms of form likeness is to show the understanding of a child. Meaning a child wants to say, oh, there's a mountain. There's a tree. And someone who has become more wise and deep doesn't see it that way. They see the elemental forces of geological change.